Hello everyone, and welcome to In the Mind's Madness. Now, today we're not going to be talking about horror specifically, we're not going to be talking about Lovecraftian horror, we're not going to be talking about movies or video games or anything like that. We are going to be talking about one of the fundamental aspects of horror, that is fear itself. Now, I could sit here and try to explain what fear is, what causes fear, but I probably wouldn't do that well of a job. And there are people who have already done a much better job than I can. That would be Vinesauce and Bite Size Science. You should be seeing clips of their videos popping up. There should be annotations that link to those videos. Just click on them, check them out if you want to know more about what fear is, what causes fear, the actual science behind fear. If those don't work, there'll be links in the description below. So we're not going to be talking about what fear is, but we're going to be talking about triggering fear. Now, Stephen King talks about fear. He has the 3 types of terror, which these are, as per the quote, the gross out, which is sight of a severed head tumbling down a flight of stairs, or when the lights go out and something green and slimy splatters against your arm. The horror, which is the unnatural, spiders the size of bears, the dead waking up and walking around. And then there's the last, and as he puts, the worst. And yes, this is from his quote, but I'm kind of paraphrasing. And the worst is terror. When you come home and notice everything you own has been taken away and replaced by an exact substitute. Or when the lights go out, you feel something behind you, you hear it, you feel its breath against your ear, but when you turn around, there's nothing there. That's his types of terror. And I don't completely agree with it, because I feel that, like, the gross out, as he talks about, I don't feel the gross out should be incorporated in fear, in terror, in horror, because you have things that gross you out. It triggers the sense of disgust and revulsion. It doesn't trigger fear at all. You can have something that grosses you out in something that's not horror. The gross out isn't required for horror. But from his types of terror, you have the horror, and the terror. Both of those invoke fear. So I've got a few complaints against it, but some of the things he says I agree with. So for me personally, and this is a disclaimer, this entire video, this is my opinion. This is how I look at horror. So if you do not agree, that's fine. Just let me know. And I'm always open for other people's views on stuff like this. But I associate horror in degrees. To me, there are 4 degrees of horror. And each one kind of builds upon the last. Like, you need the first degree to get the second. You need the first and the second to get the third, and so on and so forth. Now, what are these degrees? To me, the 4 degrees, you have scares, creeps, frights, and then terrors. Now, we all know scares. Scares are those quick, they're jump scares. They're the things that flash or scream and trigger that fight or flight instinct. Now, scares can be done poorly, or they can be done well. My opinion on a poor jump scare is the screamer. It's where something jumps in front of you and screams. Or there's that building of tension, and then it's just like a cat or a dog. And it's like, oh. Those are poor examples. Those are poorly done, because you can do so much more with that. And a lot of this also ties into the tension cycle. Building tension, and then the eventual release, and then building back again. A good jump scare is something that it doesn't include that scream, doesn't include that in-your-face jump, but something that quickly pops around, and does that release of that tension that's built up. Like, an example of, to me, a good jump scare is when let's say someone's walking down a hallway, and something weird is going on, like maybe the lights are flickering or went out, or they heard children's laughter, something like that. They're going to explore. Of course, your bad jump scare would be a door slams, with the dramatic music playing as the door slams. You expect it, you know it's coming, and it's not very imaginative. To me, a good jump scare in that situation would be the person's looking around, and then as the camera pans around, there's a child standing there, and maybe a little bit of a dramatic playing of music with that, and then the child's gone. Like a ghostly child type thing. Me personally, I feel jump scares are the cheapest type of horror. They can be done well, but most of the time they're not. But they do kind of play a part. They play a part in the tension cycle, which, if you don't know what the tension cycle is, there are others who have done videos on them. I may do a follow-up video on the tension cycle after this. That brings us to the second degree of fear, and that is the creep. Now, the creep, or things that are creepy, they are things that they somewhat trigger the fight or flight instinct, but they invoke fear, but it's also that unease, that something's not right, and it lingers for a moment. Like a perfect example, let's say you're walking along the street, and you're walking by an abandoned house, and you know it's abandoned, there's boards on the windows, the doors hanging off the hinges, but as you're walking along, you hear something inside, you hear movement. That's a house that should be abandoned, but there's something in there that creeps you out. You take off, you either start walking quickly or just take off running. But once the house is out of sight, out of mind, you calm down. You laugh at yourself. Why'd you get so scared about that? And that moment is over. Creepiness is something that doesn't just trigger the fear emotion in you, but it leaves that ambiguity of, is something wrong? Am I in danger? And it lasts a little bit longer than a scare. A scare is instantaneous. Once the scare is over, it's over. Depending on what triggered it, you're either laughing, or you're angry, or you just it's just over. While creeps, something that's creepy, it sticks with you for a little bit longer. It passes very quickly, but it's not instantaneous. And that brings us into the third degree of fear, which is, in my opinion, frights, or things that are frightening. Now these are those things that, when it happens, it sticks with you, and it sticks with you for a little while. Like, let's say you watch a really good horror movie, one that actually scares you, one that puts you on edge, and you have issues watching the entire thing. When the movie is over, let's say you went to a movie theater by yourself to watch it. I don't know why you would do that, but people do it. Now, let's say it's late at night and you're walking to your car, late night film, and everyone else has already kind of run out of the theater, so there's really no one there. So you're walking by yourself in a parking lot to your car, and you get that overwhelming feeling that there's something wrong. You have to get out of there. You run to your car, hop in, turn on the cab lights, and drive off like a maniac. There's nothing wrong. You're in a situation that doesn't even tie in with the movie or the situation, but you're still feeling it. The frights are those things that, when you experience it, can linger for a couple of hours. Like, another example, let's say you spend all night surfing the web, reading creepypastas, creepy stuff, all that, and you have to go, and you're hungry or something like that. So you go to make yourself something to eat. But the entire time, you're jumping from light to light. You're either turning on every single light in the house, or you're turning one light on in a room, moving to the next area, and then turning another light on, and then going back, turning lights off. I'll admit, I've done that a couple of times on really good horror stuff when I was younger. But there's no reason for you to be afraid. There's no reason to feel fear, but you're feeling it anyway. In the safety of your own home, you feel that fear. That's what something that is frightening is to me. And frights are rarer nowadays. A lot of modern horror doesn't make it to this degree at all. At the best, they go into the creepy area. They don't go into frightening. And the fourth degree is even rarer than that. Which, the fourth degree of fear is terror, or terrifying. Things that are terrifying. These are those things that after you experience it, it stays with you for a while. We're not talking about like an hour or two. We're talking about days. Like a perfect example, a little story from my past. When I was younger, me and my sister and a couple of our friends were going to go on a camping trip. Well, one of our friends thought it would be a brilliant idea to watch the Blair Witch Project before. So we sat down and watched it. That movie, once we were done watching it, at the time, there was nothing really like it. Found footage wasn't really a genre. And after watching that movie, we canceled the camping trip. And for a week, I would barely leave the house at night. If I left the house at night, there was lights wherever I was going. Porch light, flashlight, things like that. So that movie terrified me. I was only like 12, 13 at the time. Kind of dating myself. Terror is like the holy grail of horror. It's extremely rare. It's very, very hard to achieve. But when it is achieved, it is an amazing thing. And to get terror, you do need to have frights, you need to have frightening things, you have to have you have to hit the creeps, you have to have scares, you have to have the previous ones to achieve terror. It's kind of a pity that nowadays modern film doesn't really inspire terror. Most of them are cheap jump scares. They don't even get past the first degree at all. If they do, they might get into the creepy area, but never go beyond that. And that, in my opinion, is horrible. Horror used to be good. And I didn't mean for this to turn into, bashing modern film and all that. But you have to admit, nowadays, mainstream horror in film is not as good. It's not frightening. It's not terrifying. It's the best you can get is maybe some creepy things. On the flip side of that, a lot of independent projects, they start delving into the degrees of frightening and terrifying. Like independent film, video games, and web series. Those are starting to become a much better medium. The way they're done actually draw you in a little bit better, and they tend to delve into the degree frightening or sometimes terrifying. There's a few that I found that are very, very good and have given me many, many nights where I've not slept well. So I feel that everything is kind of transitioning to a new medium. Either that or we've just become so used to horror and film that we become desensitized to it. And it's harder and harder to get those to ratchet up the levels of tension to get to frightening and terrifying. I don't know. So we will draw this episode to a close here because I am looking at my camcorder and it is flashing low battery. So that is my opinion on fear, on the my view on the degrees of fear and unexpectedly the modern mediums for horror. So thank you all so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.